Are you sick of manually deploying your code to environments? Well, me too. It's hard to write Firebase deploy. I never want to do it again. Hello and welcome to this video about GitHub Actions. Today, we're going to talk about what GitHub Actions are and some of the things you could potentially do with it. Because I, for one, am sick of manually building, testing, and deploying my code. So, what are GitHub Actions? GitHub Actions are a powerful tool that allows developers to create custom pipelines or workflows that automate some of the processes that they usually do manually. They have been a feature of GitHub since around 2018 and have used in projects all across GitHub. The best thing about it all is that GitHub provides a generous free tier so that we as individual developers can take advantage of the system for our personal projects. With GitHub Actions, you can create a series of tasks, known as actions, that are triggered by specific events on your GitHub repository, such as a push to the main branch or the creation of a new pull request. These actions can be written in any programming language and can be used to automate a wide range of tasks, from building and testing your code to even deploying it to different environments. The great thing about actions is that there's already a massive ecosystem of pre-built actions, so you can just pick actions that fit your needs. I'm not writing any more code than I actually have to, so let's look at a working example. Here, I have a React app. It's published on GitHub Pages, and it has a couple of tests in jest. The plan for this repo, on a pull request, is to run all the tests, and on a commit to main, deploy it to GitHub Pages. So let's get started. We're going to start off by creating the workflow to run a jest test on the creation of a pull request. Here's one I made earlier. Let's go through the syntax. The first line specifies the name. Lines 2 to 5 specify when to run the workflow. In this case, we're running it on a pull request to the main branch. Line 7 and below is where the actual meat of the action is. We give it a name, in this case run jest tests, and an environment, which is Ubuntu. The first step is to check out the repository, check out the actual code to the Ubuntu environment. As you can see here, I'm using a pre-made action, which is super helpful. We then need to set up Node, as if we were doing it locally. We specify the Node version, and which package manager to use. In this case, I'm using npm. As we would do locally, we have to install all our dependencies. And finally, we can run our tests. This test script is something that I've specified in my package.json folder, as you can see here. And what I'll do now is commit this to the main branch. Once you're sure that your workflow has synced, it's time to test it. We can do this by creating a new pull request. So let's start by creating a new branch. Once we're on a new branch, let's create a new test. So I've created a new test, and hopefully this one should pass. Once I'm happy, what I can do is add this, commit this file, and then create a new pull request. Once you've made a commit to a new branch, you should be able to click the link in your terminal and create a new pull request. We'll just call it new test and create pull request. Hopefully after a few seconds, we'll see a orange circle to show that our workflow has begun. And it has. Let's look on details. You can see our steps, and our tests have passed. So we should get a nice green tick in our PR. And we're done. Now that we've finished the PR workflow, it's time to create the deploy workflow. And again, here's one I made earlier. It's very similar to the last workflow, bar a couple of changes. The first, we've got a permission up here, but we'll come back to that later. If we scroll down, we're using the same environment, same checkout, same setup, but the real difference is here. Instead of running the tests, we use a different script. We use the build script. And what that does is just transpiles the React into a distributable folder that can be hosted on GitHub Pages. There's a lot of buzzwords, but we'll cover that in a future video. What this does is then puts an index.html file in a dist folder. And this next step takes that dist folder and uploads it to GitHub Pages. Because that's a step that uses Git, this is why we have to permit it to be able to write, to our repository. So let's push this. Now that we're on GitHub, we can see already our workflow is working. It's already gone straight through. And if we look at the deploy the app step, you can see there's custom logs. And it's deployed the code to the GitHub Pages branch. Let's find that GitHub Pages branch. As you can see here, it's running the default GitHub Pages workflow specified in our repo settings. So we just need to wait for that to turn green. Eventually, it will turn green, which means it's been deployed. Let's check it out. And here we go. Perfect. Now that our workflows are set up, let's see a new feature go from one of our feature branches and deployed to our main GitHub pages. All without me lifting a finger. So, I'm not really happy with some of the text on here. So I'm going to create a new branch and update it. I don't like this bottom bit. I'm going to update this. I'm going to save it. And I'm going to commit it. Once I've pushed it, I can create a pull request from the terminal. I'm happy with this, so let's create a pull request. So theoretically, it should start running my tests automatically. So we wait a second. All the checks have passed, so let's merge our pull request. Let's delete the branch as well for good hygiene. So let's go to our main branch. And this merge commit has kicked off our deploy pipeline. So we can wait until that finishes, and hopefully that should, fingers crossed, deploy to our environment. We've got one green tick. Let's go have a look at the one on GitHub Pages. And we've got a green tick. Let's go check out our environment. Deploy to our GitHub Pages, deployment. And you can see the copy is updated. It all works perfectly. Deploying a web app is just one example of how you can use GitHub Actions for your personal project. There are loads of use cases, but this is just the start. So, what have we covered? What are GitHub Actions, some use cases, and how to deploy your own workflows to your project? If you'd like to go a bit further with this knowledge, you can have a look into branch protection. You can stop pull requests being merged based on the outcome of an action. So, that's everything I'd like to cover. I hope you enjoyed, and as always, happy coding.